Have you ever set this like massive, life-changing financial or fitness goal?
Oh, definitely. We all have.
Right. And you get incredibly hyped up. Um, you work insanely hard for a solid month. You sacrifice, you sweat, you look at your bank account or the scale, and you see absolutely zero results.
The worst feeling,
Yeah. So you just throw your hands up and give up. You sit there on the couch thinking, I just don't have the willpower. Like, I am fundamentally broken.
which is such a common trap.
Exactly. But what if the problem wasn't your willpower at all? What if the problem was that you were entirely focused on the exact wrong thing from literally day one?
That changes everything.
It really does. Anyway, I'm Matt.
And I'm Betty. Welcome to the Money Podcast Show.
Our mission here is, well, it's incredibly simple, and we really respect your time. We know that you are busy.
Super busy.
Right. You don't have the luxury of just sitting down and reading every single important financial, psychological, and self-development book that hits the shelves.
Who has the time for that?
Nobody. So we do the heavy lifting for you. We do the reading. We study the core ideas. We argue about them quite a bit, actually.
We definitely do.
Yeah. And we bring you the clearest, most actionable lessons to completely shortcut your path to success.
Absolutely. And before we get into today's deep dive, please do us a massive favor. Just hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment down below telling us what financial book, money topic, or author you want us to cover next.
Yeah, we literally read every single comment.
We really do. Your suggestions are basically what build the schedule for this show.
Totally. So today, we are embarking on a massive deep dive into the underlying systems of behavior change. We're looking specifically at this incredible framework laid out in James Clear's phenomenal book, Atomic Habits.
Such a good one.
It is. And I want to be clear right out of the gate. This isn't just theory.
Right, not just fluff.
Exactly. We aren't just talking about abstract, ivory tower psychology here. We are talking about the literal architecture of how you build wealth, how you build health, and how you design a life that actually works for you instead of constantly working against you.
And to really ground this, like to prove that these aren't just empty feel-good theories you'd find on some motivational poster in a corporate office.
Oh, I hate those posters.
Right. But to prove this is real, we have to talk about how the author himself actually arrived at these principles. Because it wasn't in some pristine laboratory.
No, not at all.
It was born out of absolute life-shattering trauma. So in his sophomore year of high school, he was hit in the face with a baseball bat.
Which is just, it's horrifying to even think about.
It really is. And I don't mean a glancing blow either. The bat literally slipped out of a classmate's hands during a full aggressive swing and struck him directly between the eyes.
Yeah, it's a brutal story to read. Like, the sheer force of the impact completely crushed his nose into a U shape.
Ugh, I can't even imagine.
It shattered both of his eye sockets. It caused multiple severe skull fractures. And honestly, the worst part, the soft tissue of his brain slammed into the inside of his skull, which caused massive immediate swelling.
Right, and the details in his account of that day are just chilling. He remembers being walked to the nurse's office, completely in shock with blood pouring everywhere.
Yeah.
The nurse sits him down and asks him basic concussion protocol questions. Like, what year is it?
Standard stuff, right?
Yeah. And he said, 1998. It was actually 2002.
Wow.
She asks who the president is, and he gives the completely wrong answer. But the most terrifying part, like the part that really sticks with you, was when she asked him his own mother's name.
Oh, man.
He stalled. 10 whole seconds passed in agonizing silence before he could pull his own mother's name out of his traumatized brain.
And shortly after that, his body just started shutting down. Like, he couldn't swallow, he couldn't breathe on his own.
Right.
He started having violent seizures, slipped into a coma, and actually had to be medevaced by a helicopter to a much larger hospital that was capable of handling severe brain injuries.
It's so intense.
It is. And the reason we are bringing this up, the reason we are starting a deep dive on success and wealth with such a horrific medical emergency is because his recovery wasn't some training montage in a movie.
Yeah, exactly.
You know those movies where the hero wakes up, gets out of bed, and suddenly takes massive world-changing action?
Oh, yeah. Cue the inspirational music.
Right. But he couldn't do that. He was fundamentally broken, both physically and neurologically.
Exactly. When your baseline is that shattered, you just don't have the energy or the capacity for massive action.
You literally can't.
No. He had to rely on tiny, almost microscopic habits just to function again, just to rebound to a basic baseline level of existing in the world.
Right.
So he focused on incredibly small habits, like going to sleep at the exact same time every night, keeping his bedroom clean, studying for just a few minutes a day without getting a migraine.
Just the bare minimum, really.
Yeah, these tiny atomic habits were his only lifeline. But over years, those microscopic actions compounded.
They really did.
They eventually allowed him to get back on the baseball field, to perform at an incredibly high academic level in college, to become a writer, and ultimately to build a massive business with a newsletter read by millions of people.
Which is incredible.
It is. He didn't have the luxury of taking massive action. He only had the power of the tiny habit.
And that transition, from profound personal trauma to macro level success is exactly what we want to unpack today.
Yeah, because it applies to everything.
It really does, because this exact principle, the sheer overwhelming power of microscopic changes, it doesn't just apply to recovering from a physical injury, it operates on a world-class macroeconomic scale.
Right.
So let's start with the absolute core of this entire philosophy, the math of compounding habits, or as it's often called, the idea of getting just 1% better.
This is where the math gets so incredibly fascinating, but also, incredibly unintuitive for the human brain.
Oh, totally. Our brains are not wired for this.
Not at all. Improving by just 1% isn't notable in the moment.
Yeah.
In fact, it's often completely invisible.
Yeah.
Like if you get 1% better at your job today, nobody's throwing you a parade in the office.
Sadly, no.
Your boss doesn't notice. You might not even notice. But mathematically, if you get 1% better every single day for 1 year, you don't end up 1% better.
Right.
You end up 37 times better by the end of that single year.
37 times. I mean, it's the exact same principle as compound interest in investing, which is a concept we talk about constantly on this show.
Yes, all the time.
Habits are literally the compound interest of self-improvement. Let's think about investing for a second. In the early days of putting money into an index fund, your money looks entirely flat.
Super boring.
It's so boring. You put in $100, you get a 5% return, you make $5. Big deal, right?
Right.
You look at your account and think, I can't buy a yacht with $5. Why am I even doing this?
Exactly. It feels pointless.
But over a timeline of 10, 20, or 30 years, that flat curve hits an inflection point and goes completely exponential.
Yep.
Good habits work the exact same way. But unfortunately, the math doesn't care if the habit is good or bad. If you get 1% worse every day for a year, you decline nearly all the way down to zero.
And to really see this 1% compounding in action on a global stage,
Yeah.
you have to look at the story of the British cycling team.
Oh, man, this story.
This story absolutely blew my mind when I first read it, because for about 100 years, British cyclists were, frankly, terrible.
Just awful.
They were the laughingstock of the cycling world. They had won almost nothing. No Tour de France victories, hardly any Olympic medals.
Wow.
They were so historically bad that top bicycle manufacturers actually refused to sell them premium gear because they genuinely thought it would hurt their brand image if the British team was seen riding their bikes.
That is brutal. I mean, imagine being so bad at your profession that the people who make the tools for your profession refuse to take your money.
It's so embarrassing.
It really is. But then the organization makes a change. They hire this guy, Dave Brailsford, as their new performance director. And his entire strategy was based on this concept he called the aggregation of marginal gains.
Which sounds fancy, but it's really simple.
Exactly. It's just the 1% rule brought to life. He didn't come in and try to invent a brand new type of bicycle. He didn't put the riders through some brutal, unseen, revolutionary training regimen.
Right?
He just looked for a 1% improvement in every tiny conceivable area.
Right. And some of the things they did seem almost ridiculous at first glance.
Oh, totally.
Like they redesigned the bike seats to make them slightly more comfortable. They rubbed alcohol on the tires to get a fraction of a percent better grip on the road.
Okay, to make sense.
Yeah, they had riders wear electrically heated overshorts to maintain perfect muscle temperature. But then they went into these overlooked, bizarre areas that had nothing to do with cycling directly.
This is the crazy part.
It is. They tested various massage gels to see which specific one led to the fastest muscle recovery. They brought a literal medical surgeon in to teach the riders the optimal clinical way to wash their hands.
Wait, a surgeon?
Yes. Why? So they wouldn't catch a cold and miss even a single day of training.
I have to admit, like, when you read about this, the natural reaction is deep skepticism.
For sure.
I read that and thought, does washing your hands really win you an Olympic gold medal? This sounds like corporate micromanagement gone completely insane.
Right, like how does hand hygiene equal a Tour de France victory?
Exactly.
Well, because you have to look at the psychology of marginal gains, not just the physical act. When you eliminate a tiny 1% annoyance, like a slightly uncomfortable bike seat, or a lingering cough from a cold men's arm, you are freeing up cognitive load for the athlete.
Oh, cognitive load. Okay.
Yeah. If the seat is perfect, the rider spends zero mental energy trying to shift their weight to get comfortable. That means 100% of their energy, both physical and mental, is driving the pedals. It's the accumulation of hundreds of these tiny freed up percentages.
That actually makes perfect sense. Like, it's not the hand washing itself. It's the fact that you didn't lose 3 days of training in November, which means you were stronger in December, which means you peaked perfectly in July.
Exactly.
And they didn't stop there. They figured out exactly which type of pillow and mattress led to the best night's sleep for each individual rider. And they actually loaded those specific mattresses into trucks and brought them to hotels on the road.
That is dedication.
Right. They even painted the inside of the team transport truck completely white.
Wait, why white?
And the reasoning is brilliant. They painted the truck floor white so they could spot tiny, almost invisible bits of dust that would normally blend in.
Gust.
Yeah, because that dust could float into the finely tuned mechanics of the racing bikes and degrade the gear performance by a fraction of a percent.
That's next level obsession.
Hmm.
And when you accumulate hundreds of these tiny 1% improvements, the sleep, the dust, the tires, the hand washing, the results are staggering.
They really are.
It is the absolute definition of compounding. Just 5 years after taking over, Dave Brailsford and the British cycling team went to the 2008 Beijing Olympics and won an astounding 60% of the gold medals available in road and track cycling.
60%.
Yeah. Then they went on to win 5 Tour de France victories in 6 years. They completely undeniably dominated the sport.
Which brings us to the massive, fatal mistake that almost everybody makes when they are trying to improve their finances, their fitness, or their life.
Yes, this is so important.
We drastically, fundamentally overestimate the importance of one defining moment, and we massively underestimate the value of making small improvements on a daily basis.
We really do.
People convince themselves that massive success requires massive, earth-shattering action. Think about it. If you want to get rich, society tells you that you need to invent the next billion-dollar app.
Or, like, hit a risky leveraged stock trade.
Exactly. And if you want to lose weight, you feel like you need to go on a brutal starvation diet and live in the gym for 4 hours a day.
But that is just not how reality works.
No.
Success is the product of daily habits, not once-in-a-lifetime transformations. If you're listening to this right now, the way you actually apply this is to stop obsessing over your current immediate results and start tracking your trajectory.
Tracking your trajectory. I like that.
Yeah. Ask yourself, are you spending less than you earn right now? Are you reading just a few pages of a book daily? Are you making those tiny 1% positive choices? Because if your trajectory is pointed up by 1%, the destination will absolutely take care of itself.
This brings up an ultimate truth that really hits home, especially when we talk about personal finance. And it's this. Outcomes are just a lagging measure of your habits.
Ooh, lagging measure.
Yeah, think about that. Your net worth is a lagging measure of your financial habits. Your physical weight is a lagging measure of your eating habits.
Makes sense.
Even the clutter in your living room is a lagging measure of your daily cleaning habits. You ultimately get what you repeat.
You get what you repeat. I absolutely love that phrasing because it removes luck from the equation entirely.
It puts the control back in your hands.
Right. But that naturally leads us into a huge, deeply frustrating roadblock. Because if we know that 1% improvements are so mathematically powerful, why is it so incredibly hard to stick with them?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah, why do so many of us start a new strict budget or a new gym routine on January 1st and then completely quit by January 18th?
It's so true. That is the perfect question. And it takes us into our second major concept, the plateau of latent potential.
The plateau of latent potential.
Yes, and to really grasp why we quit, we have to understand the fundamental biological difference between our linear expectations and the actual reality of compounding.
Okay.
Small changes appear to make exactly zero difference until you cross a critical threshold. This creates a deeply psychological trap known as the Valley of Disappointment.
The Valley of Disappointment. Let's use an analogy to really visualize this, because it's so important to understand what's happening in your brain when you want to quit.
Yeah, visual examples are the best.
Imagine you are sitting in a room and it's cold. You can see your breath. The thermometer on the wall says it's 25 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, freezing.
Right.
Hmm.
And sitting on the table directly in front of you is an ice cube. Now, slowly, the room begins to heat up. It goes to 26 degrees,
Yeah.
27, 28.
Right.
You are putting energy into the room. You are doing the work, right? But the ice cube just sits there. Nothing happens.
Still frozen.
Exactly. 29, 30, 31 degrees. Still, absolutely nothing. You've been putting in all this effort, raising the temperature, doing everything right, and the ice is exactly the same as when you started.
And this is the exact moment when most people throw their hands up. It's the moment you've been paying an extra $500 a month toward your student loans,
Yeah.
but you look at the principal balance and the interest has eaten most of it, and it feels like the loan hasn't moved at all. It's 31 degrees. You were
Yeah.
just exhausted.
Exactly. But then the room hits 32 degrees, and suddenly the ice begins to melt. That single 1 degree shift, which required the exact same amount of energy as all the temperature increases before it, unlocked a massive, visible change.
Wow.
But the crucial perspective-shifting thing to realize is that the melting wasn't the result of that final degree alone. It was built entirely on all the unseen degrees before it. The energy wasn't being wasted, it was being stored.
Stored energy. That completely changes how you view a lack of progress.
It's just like the Chinese bamboo tree.
Oh, I've heard of this.
Yeah, you plant the seed, you water it, you fertilize it, and for 5 entire years, you see barely a single green shoot above the ground.
Yeah.
You look like a fool watering dirt for 5 years.
Just staring at a patch of mud.
Right. But all of its growth is happening underground, building this massive, complex root system. And then, in the 6th year, it shoots up 90 feet into the air in a matter of 6 weeks.
That's incredible. And it shows that the core mistake people make, like the reason we fail our resolutions, is letting the slow pace of visible transformation dictate our actions.
Yep.
We fall right into that valley of disappointment. People think, I've been skipping my morning latte and bringing a packed lunch to work for an entire month. Why am I not financially independent yet?
Or I've been running every single morning for 3 weeks. Why do I still look exactly the same in the mirror?
Exactly. And because they don't see the immediate linear result they feel they are owed, they just quit. They give up right when the temperature hits 31 degrees.
They pull the plug right before the melting point. So how do you actually survive this?
Yeah.
You have to fundamentally shift your expectations. You have to survive the plateau.
And how do we do that?
You have to understand that in the early and middle stages of any quest, whether it's paying off massive credit card debt, building a business, or learning a new language, your work is not being wasted. It is being stored. You are building the root system. You are heating the room.
But let's be honest, surviving that valley of disappointment requires immense psychological fortitude. Like, to actually push through that plateau without losing your mind, you have to completely change how you view the concept of success itself.
Oh, absolutely.
Which brings us to the third major idea, and this one is going to aggressively challenge a lot of conventional wisdom. You have to prioritize systems over goals.
This is a massive paradigm shift. The purpose of a goal is to win the game, but the purpose of a system is to continue playing the game.
I like that distinction.
To paraphrase the underlying philosophy, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. True, long-term thinking is actually goalless thinking.
Okay, wait, I have to jump in and push back on this pretty hard.
Go for it.
Because if you read any financial guru, any Fortune 500 business coach, any productivity expert, the very first thing they tell you to do is set clear, measurable, smart goals.
Yes, they do.
Every corporation runs on quarterly targets. You need a target, right? If I don't have a goal of making $1 million, how do I even know what system to build?
Isn't a system without a goal just wandering aimlessly?
Mm.
Are we actually saying that setting goals is entirely useless?
Not useless, no. But they are dramatically, dangerously overvalued when it comes to driving daily action.
Okay.
Think of it this way. Goals are fantastic for setting a direction. If you are driving a car, the goal is the destination on the map. You need to know you are driving to New York and not Los Angeles.
Sure.
But the system is the engine, the steering wheel, the gas pedal. If you have a blown-out engine, staring intensely at the map isn't going to get you a single mile down the road.
That's a great point.
If you have a bad system, a good goal absolutely will not save you. Both the winners and the losers in any game have the exact same goal.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Every Olympian wants the gold medal. The goal didn't differentiate them. The system of training did.
That is a phenomenal point. The winners and the losers have the exact same goal. So the goal cannot be the differentiator. It's exact.
The classic example that exposes the flaw of goal-oriented thinking is the marathon runner. You see this happen all the time.
Oh, yeah?
Someone decides they want to run a marathon. That's the goal. They train relentlessly for 6 months. They are up at 5 a.m. They are logging miles in the rain. Their diet is perfectly dialed in. They run the race. They cross the finish line. They get the medal. And then what happens the very next morning?
They sleep in?
Exactly. They immediately stop running. The goal has been achieved, so the motivation vanishes completely. If all of your hard work is entirely focused on a particular goal, what is left to push you forward after you achieve it?
That's the exact mistake people make. And it creates this massive destructive yo-yo effect.
Yeah, the yo-yo.
You see it in personal finance constantly.
Yeah.
Someone gets incredibly motivated to pay off their credit card debt. They create a hardcore spreadsheet. They live on rice and beans. They sell their stuff, and they finally hit zero. Goal achieved. But because they were only motivated by the finish line, it didn't actually change their underlying system of living. They feel a void. So they immediately go out and celebrate by putting a luxury vacation on the exact same credit card.
Yes.
6 months later, they are right back in debt.
Furthermore, being heavily goal-oriented creates this highly toxic either-or conflict in your mind.
Oh, this is so true.
The implicit assumption behind any goal is, once I reach my goal, then I will be allowed to be happy. You are constantly deferring your happiness to some imaginary point in the future.
This is awful.
It is. You mentally box yourself into a terribly narrow version of success. It's either you achieve the massive goal and you are a success, or you fall short and you are a massive, miserable disappointment.
Which is a miserable, anxiety-inducing way to live. It means you are spending 99% of your life in a state of pre-success failure. What you have to do is fall in love with the process rather than the product. When you focus on the system, you don't have to wait to give yourself permission to be happy. You can be satisfied and feel successful anytime your system is running.
I love that.
If your system is writing 200 words a day, you are successful the absolute second you write those words, regardless of whether the book ever becomes a bestseller 5 years from now.
Okay, so if we are shifting our focus away from the finish line and toward the daily system, what we are really talking about is changing who we are on a fundamental psychological level.
Yes, deep change.
We aren't just changing what we do, we are changing our identity. And this brings us to the fourth major idea, the 3 layers of behavior change, and why identity-based habits are the only ones that actually survive the test of time.
Imagine human behavior as an onion with 3 distinct layers.
Okay, and then yeah.
The outermost layer is outcomes. This is what you get. Losing 20 pounds, publishing a book, hitting $1 million net worth. Most goals we just talked about are set at this outer level.
Makes sense.
The middle layer is process. This is what you do. Implementing a new gym routine, setting up an automatic transfer to your Vanguard index funds every Friday.
Right.
But the third, deepest layer, right in the center of the onion, is identity. This is what you believe. Your worldview, your self-image, your deep-seated biases about yourself.
The problem isn't that any of these layers are inherently bad. Like, you need outcomes and you need processes.
Of course.
The fatal flaw is the direction of the change. Most people try to change their lives from the outside in. They start with the outcome. I want to be rich. Then they move to the process. I'll start investing in real estate.
Right.
But they never touch the core identity. Deep down, they still deeply believe they are someone who deserves to spend money impulsively to feel good, or they identify as a consumer rather than an investor. And behavior that is incongruent with your self-image simply will not last. It will snap back like a rubber band.
Right. If you want to build wealth, but your identity is tied up in being someone who consumes, someone who needs the newest car to feel worthy, the gravitational pull of your identity will always, inevitably, drag you back towards spending.
Always.
Let's look at a real-life example that perfectly illustrates how subtle but powerful this is. Imagine 2 people who are both trying to quit smoking. Someone walks up to them at a party and offers them a cigarette. Person A says, no thanks, I'm trying to quit.
Which sounds like a perfectly reasonable, polite response.
Right.
But fundamentally, look at the language.
Mm.
Person A still identifies as a smoker. They're a smoker who is actively trying to be something else. They're relying entirely on raw willpower, hoping their behavior will change while carrying around the exact same limiting beliefs. They still view the cigarette as a sacrifice they are making.
Exactly. Now, compare that to person B. When offered the exact same cigarette, person B simply says, no thanks, I'm not a smoker.
Ooh, completely different.
It's a tiny shift in words, but it represents a massive tectonic shift in worldview. They no longer identify as someone who smokes. Smoking is a thing of their past, not part of who they are right now. The cigarette isn't a sacrifice. It's simply irrelevant to them. The mistake people constantly make is trying to change the habit without ever addressing the underlying belief. They install a new plan, but they keep the same identity.
It really is like trying to install a brand new software update on a completely outdated operating system.
Yes, perfect analogy.
Let's say you buy the most advanced, high-performance budgeting app on the market, but you try to run it on a computer from 1998. It might run for a day or two, but eventually the hardware is going to overheat and crash. The OS simply cannot support the software.
It's bound to fail.
True behavior change is identity change. You might start a habit because of a sudden burst of motivation after watching a YouTube video, but the only reason you will stick with it long term is if it becomes part of your core identity.
And the fascinating thing here, the part that gives us all hope, is where the word identity actually comes from historically.
Oh, I love word origins.
If you look at the etymology, it's derived from two Latin words, essentitas, which means being, and identitam, which means repeatedly. Your identity literally translates to your repeated beingness.
Repeated beingness. Wow.
Think about how empowering that is. You are not born with preset beliefs. You aren't born with an identity as a bad saver or a lazy person. Every belief you have about yourself is learned and conditioned through your own repeated experiences.
So how do you actually use this? Like, if my identity is my repeated beingness, how do I rewrite the code?
You have to start viewing your daily habits as votes for your new identity.
Votes.
Yeah. Whatever your identity is right now, you only believe it because you have years of proof backing it up. If you go to the gym, even when it's raining and you're tired, you are casting a vote into the ballot box that says, I am an athlete. If you transfer $50 to your investment account instead of buying expensive takeout, you are casting a vote that says, I am a wealth builder. The goal isn't to read a book. The goal is to become a reader. The goal isn't to save $1,000. The goal is to become a saver.
Every single time you make your bed in the morning, you embody the identity of an organized person. So if you are listening to this on your commute or while washing dishes, think about the goal you have. Figure out who the type of person is that could achieve that goal. What does a financially independent person do on a Tuesday night? And then start casting tiny, microscopic votes for that identity every single day.
I love that. Small votes add up.
All right, so we know we need to cast these votes. The philosophy is sound. But how do we actually get ourselves to execute it consistently in the real world when we are tired and stressed?
That's the hard part.
It is. This brings us to the operational mechanics of habit formation. Every habit, good or bad, goes through a 4-step neurological feedback loop. Cue, craving, response, and reward. And from these 4 steps, we get the 4 laws of behavior change.
The 4 laws. Let's get into it.
Let's focus on the very first lever, the cue. The first law is make it obvious, and this ties directly into how you design your environment.
The reality of human psychology is that over time, the cues that spark our daily habits become completely invisible to us. You don't even realize you are doing them.
Totally.
You walk into a dark room and flip the light switch without consciously deciding to do it. No behavior happens in a vacuum. Your physical environment heavily, undeniably dictates your actions. There's a brilliant quote summarizing this. Be the designer of your world and not merely the consumer of it.
Be the designer. To really understand how insanely powerful environmental cues are, we have to look at the Diderot effect.
Oh, this story is wild.
It is. This is a brilliant historical story. Denis Diderot was a French philosopher living in the 1700s. For almost his entire life, he lived in absolute grinding poverty. But he was famous as the co-founder and writer of one of the most comprehensive encyclopedias of the time. Well, Catherine the Great, the Empress of Russia, heard about his financial troubles. She was a patron of the arts and offered to buy his personal library for an exorbitant amount of money, the equivalent of over $150,000 in today's money.
That's a huge windfall.
Massive. So suddenly, overnight, Diderot goes from poverty to having money to spare. So what does he do? He goes out and buys himself a magnificent, beautiful scarlet robe.
A scarlet robe, naturally.
Naturally, and the robe was indeed a masterpiece. But there was a massive, unforeseen psychological problem. Once he put the pristine scarlet robe on and stood in his apartment, he immediately noticed how incredibly out of place it looked compared to his common, rundown possessions.
Oh.
He actually wrote an essay about this, saying there was no more coordination, no more unity, no more beauty between his elegant robe and the rest of his shabby stuff.
So what happens next? A total spiral of consumption. He feels this overpowering, irrational urge to upgrade everything else in his life to match the visual cue of the new robe. He replaces his old, dusty rug with a luxurious one from Damascus. He buys expensive sculptures. He gets a beautiful mirror for the mantle.
He keeps going.
He tosses his old straw chair and buys a fancy leather one. One single purchase triggered a massive chain reaction. That is the Diderot effect. Obtaining a new possession creates a spiral of consumption that leads to additional, unnecessary purchases.
And we see this exact same consumption spiral all the time today. Think about it. You buy a new 4K TV for your living room. You set it up, and suddenly you feel like your old TV stand looks cheap.
Oh, I've been there.
So you go to Target and buy a new stand, but now the wood of the stand clashes with the living room rug. So you buy a new rug. Now the couch looks worn out. It's an endless loop.
An expensive loop.
Very. You went in for a TV and spent $3,000 remodeling your living room. But the beauty is, we can use this exact same psychological mechanism, the power of visual cues, to our advantage when designing our environment for good habits.
Yes. Let's talk about the grocery store. I used to go to the store and buy apples because I genuinely wanted to eat healthier. I'd come home, put them in the crisper drawer at the very bottom of the fridge, and completely forget about them for 3 weeks until they rotted into mush.
We have all done that.
Why did I do that? Because the cue was invisible.
Exactly. The environment was actively working against the habit. The apples were hidden behind a plastic wall. So the fix is incredibly simple, but it completely changes the behavior.
Put them in a bowl on the counter.
Yes, you buy a large display bowl, you put it in the dead center of the kitchen counter, and you put the apples right there. Now the cue is obvious. It's screaming at you every time you walk into the kitchen.
In sight means in mind.
Out of sight literally means out of mind, but in sight means in mind. The biggest mistake people make is trying to rely entirely on raw discipline in a highly distracting, poorly designed environment.
Another huge mistake when it comes to environment design is mixing your contexts. We see this with modern technology all the time.
Oh, phones are the worst for this.
The worst. Your smartphone is an absolute marvel of engineering, but it's a terrible environment for building habits. Think about how you use it. You use it to read important, stressful work emails.
Right.
But you also use it to endlessly scroll social media, play mindless video games, and watch movies in bed. It becomes a mishmash of completely conflicting cues. When you pick it up, your brain doesn't know whether it's supposed to be highly productive, highly stressed, or completely lazy.
So how do we fix this? What is the practical application? First, you utilize a strategy called habit stacking. The formula is incredibly simple and brilliant. After current habit, I will new habit.
Habit stacking.
Yeah. You don't tie the new habit to a vague time or a place. You tie it to something you already do effortlessly every single day. For example, after I pour my morning cup of coffee, I will meditate for exactly 1 minute.
That's so doable.
Right. Or, after I take off my work shoes at the front door, I will immediately change into my gym clothes. You are using the established momentum of the old habit to trigger the new one.
Second, take control and actively redesign your physical environment. Stop playing defense.
Yeah.
If you want to remember to take a vitamin every night, don't leave the bottle hidden in the medicine cabinet behind the toothpaste. Put it directly next to the bathroom faucet so you have to physically look at it.
Make it unavoidable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you want to practice guitar, take it out of the case in the closet and put it on a stand right in the middle of the living room. Make the good choice the most obvious, unavoidable choice in the room.
And what if you have a bad habit you want to break?
If you are really struggling to break a bad habit, try building the new habit in a completely new environment, like going to a new coffee shop to write, where your brain isn't fighting against years of established negative cues sitting on your home couch.
Okay, so you've redesigned your environment. You are an environment architect. The bowl of apples is on the counter. The guitar is in the living room. You see the cue clearly. The next step is actually taking the physical action.
Yeah.
But this brings us face to face with the reality of human nature. And let's be brutally honest, human nature is fundamentally lazy.
We really are.
We always, without exception, seek the path of least resistance. This takes us to the third law of behavior change, make it easy, and the fascinating concept of friction.
The law of least effort states that when deciding between two similar options, people will naturally gravitate toward the option that requires the least amount of work. It is biologically hardwired into us to conserve energy.
Right, for survival.
Yes. Our ancestors lived in a world where calories were scarce. Spending unnecessary energy could literally mean starvation. Habits are simply reliable, effortless solutions to recurring problems.
Makes sense.
So the reason you scroll on your phone for 2 hours instead of reading a dense financial textbook isn't necessarily because you lack morals or willpower. It's because scrolling requires nearly zero physical or mental friction.
This is a profound shift in thinking. When you realize that every single habit you have is actually an obstacle to what you truly want.
Wait, explain that.
Well, nobody actually wants the habit of dieting, right?
Yeah.
They want the outcome of being fit and energetic.
Oh, I see.
Nobody wants the habit of staring at Excel spreadsheets for hours. They want the outcome of financial freedom. The habit is just the toll you have to pay to get the result. And if the toll is too high, if the obstacle is too hard, you simply won't do it.
To put this in perspective, behavioral researchers estimate that roughly 40 to 50% of our actions on any given day are done entirely out of habit. Half of your day is on absolute autopilot.
Half your day.
Think about hailing a cab in a busy city. If you do it the exact same way on the exact same street corner every single morning, it becomes completely habitualized. It requires zero conscious thought. It's reliable and effortless.
Or think about how corporate giants use this against us. Look at Amazon's buy now with one click button. That is a trillion-dollar application of removing friction.
Oh, absolutely. That's
Yeah.
dangerous.
They realize that if a customer has to put an item in a cart, click checkout, enter their shipping address, find their wallet, type in a 16-digit credit card number, and hit confirm. There are 6 points of friction where the customer might reconsider.
6 chances to say no.
Exactly. By reducing it to one single click, they removed the obstacle. They made giving them money effortless.
It's brilliant and terrifying.
If we apply this to ourselves, think about choosing a gym. If you choose a gym that is directly on your commute home from work, meaning you literally have to drive past the front door, you are vastly more likely to go than if you choose a slightly nicer gym that is just 15 minutes out of your way in the opposite direction.
Oh, totally. That 15 minutes is a deal breaker.
That 15-minute detour represents massive friction. On a Thursday afternoon when you are tired, stressed, and hungry, that tiny bit of extra driving effort is all the excuse your brain needs to convince you to just go straight home.
The fatal mistake people make here is trying to brute force their way through high-friction tasks while simultaneously being surrounded by incredibly convenient, low-friction bad habits.
Yes.
Picture this. You are sitting on a comfortable, plush couch. The TV remote is 3 inches from your hand. Your phone is buzzing with dopamine-inducing notifications. And you are trying to force yourself to get up, find your workout clothes, put on your shoes, drive in traffic, and go lift heavy weights.
It's just not going to happen.
It's a spectacularly unfair fight.
Yep.
I have never seen someone consistently stick to positive habits in a negative environment.
So the application here is to become a friction architect in your own life. You want to optimize your environment to push your good habits toward the effortless side of the spectrum and violently push your bad habits toward the difficult side.
Push them away.
Make the bad habits invisible and hard. If you spend too much time watching TV after work, add friction. Take the batteries out of the remote and put them in a drawer in another room.
Or unplug the TV entirely.
Exactly. If you want to eat healthier, chop up all your vegetables on Sunday afternoon so that during the week, eating healthy is actually faster and easier than ordering a pizza on an app.
Reduce the friction.
Exactly. Reduce the friction for the person you want to become and increase it for the person you are trying to leave behind. Okay, so we've covered making it obvious so you clearly see the cue and making it easy so you don't fight the friction to take the action.
Right.
But how do you guarantee that you will show up and do it again tomorrow and the next day and the next? That leads us to the fourth law. Make it satisfying, and what is known as the absolute cardinal rule of behavior change.
The cardinal rule is incredibly simple, but it dictates almost everything we do as a species. What is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided.
It's just basic conditioning.
You learn what to do in the future based entirely on what you were rewarded for doing in the past. If you want a habit to stick, you need to feel immediately successful,
Hmm.
even if it's in a very small manufactured way. The massive challenge here is human evolution. Our brains evolved in what scientists call a return immediate environment.
Return immediate.
Yeah. Our ancestors living on the African savanna needed immediate rewards. Finding a berry to eat, securing a cave for shelter, running away from a predator. Today, we live in a completely mismatched, delayed return environment.
Oh, I see where this is going.
You go to work today, but you don't get paid for 2 weeks. You save money in a 401k today, but you don't get to retire for 30 years. You go to the gym today, but you don't lose weight until next month. Our ancient brains are fundamentally not naturally wired to value delayed rewards over immediate ones.
A brilliant historical example of adding an immediate reward to create a global habit is the story of Wrigley's chewing gum.
Oh, I didn't know this one.
Back in the 1800s, chewing gum was commercially available, but it was basically just bland, tasteless resin. It was chewy, but it wasn't enjoyable. Nobody really cared about it. It was a niche product.
Sounds gross, honestly.
It was. Then, in 1891, Wrigley completely revolutionized the industry by doing one simple thing. They added flavors like spearmint and juicy fruit.
Ah. Suddenly, chewing gum wasn't just a jaw exercise. It was a flavor explosion. It was fun. It provided an immediate, highly satisfying hit of taste. Sales skyrocketed instantly, and Wrigley became the largest chewing gum company in the entire world.
Toothpaste had a very similar fascinating trajectory. Before modern toothpaste was popularized by marketers like Claude Hopkins, brushing your teeth was just a tedious chore. It tasted like chalk.
Yuck.
But manufacturers discovered that if they added spearmint or peppermint flavors, it didn't actually clean your teeth any better. The mint does absolutely nothing for hygiene. But it created this incredibly satisfying, tingling, clean mouth feeling.
That fresh feeling.
Exactly. That immediate physical sensation is what actually taught the brain that the behavior was worth repeating. Without that immediate satisfaction, it's just tedious scrubbing that no one wants to do.
So the massive mistake people make when building habits is ignoring this biological reality. They try to start habits that have zero immediate payoff and are actually painful in the short term.
Yeah.
But an even bigger mistake, and we see this all the time, is falling into the all-or-nothing cycle. You know the cycle.
Oh, I definitely do.
You track your calories or your spending perfectly for 14 days straight. You are on fire. On day 15, you go to a friend's birthday party and eat 2 slices of pizza, or you buy an expensive jacket you didn't need.
And then what happens?
What happens mentally? You think, well, the streak is broken, the diet is ruined, the budget is blown. I might as well eat the entire cake and buy the matching shoes.
That is the psychological spiral that destroys years of compounding progress. The rule you have to internalize right now is this: missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a brand new habit.
That is profound.
This is the defining, distinguishing feature between winners and losers. Anyone can have a bad day, a terrible workout, or a weak moment where they blow their budget. But successful people rebound immediately. They do not let a slip become a slide.
So what can you practically do to make things satisfying and ensure you rebound? First, track your habits visually. A simple paper calendar on the wall where you draw a big red X on the days you hit your goal is incredibly powerful.
Just a simple calendar.
Yeah. Seeing that unbroken chain provides an immediate visual reward. It's deeply satisfying to mark that X. It scratches that primitive itch for immediate success. But you must be careful not to measure the wrong thing.
What do you mean?
If you run a restaurant and you only track the metric of how many meals you serve, you might start cutting corners on ingredient quality to serve more people faster. You hit your metric, but your food tastes worse, and eventually your business fails. Track the right things.
And the second thing you can do, which is arguably the most important mathematical lesson in finance and habit building, is to never interrupt compounding unnecessarily. I love referencing Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's longtime business partner, on this.
Well, Munger is a legend.
He understood the math of compounding better than almost anyone alive. Think about the pure math of a loss. If you start with $100 and you lose 33%, you are down to roughly $67.
Right.
To get back to your original $100, you don't just need a 33% gain. You need a 50% gain on that new $67 baseline just to break even.
That math is terrifying. It means losses hit you drastically harder than gains.
It is terrifying. Downward momentum requires disproportionate upward energy to correct. That's why your bad days are actually your most important days. When you are absolutely exhausted after a 10-hour workday and you don't want to go to the gym, doing just 5 simple squats in your living room is massively important.
Just 5 squats.
Yeah, it doesn't build any new muscle, but it prevents the baseline from dropping to zero. It protects the compounding curve. It casts a vote for your identity as someone who doesn't miss workouts, even when they feel terrible. Don't put up a zero. Don't let the losses eat into your compound interest.
Wow. Don't put up a zero. That is such a powerful, actionable way to frame it.
Yeah,
Doing one push-up or saving $1 is infinitely better than zero.
absolutely.
As we bring this massive deep dive to a close, let's tie all of these incredible, paradigm-shifting concepts together. The biggest takeaway here isn't just one single tactic. It's understanding that success is a continuous, endless process of rotating through these 4 laws.
The 4 laws.
You make the cue obvious, you make the craving attractive, you make the response easy, you make the reward satisfying, and when you inevitably hit a roadblock, you troubleshoot using those exact same 4 levers.
Exactly. Small habits don't just add up, they compound. The seed of every habit is a single, tiny, easily ignorable decision. But as that decision is repeated over weeks and months, it sprouts roots. Breaking a deep-seated bad habit is like trying to uproot a massive, entrenched oak tree from inside your mind.
But building a good habit is like cultivating a delicate flower. One day, one repetition, 1% at a time. You literally become your habits.
Before we go, I want to leave you with one reflective question to mull over as you go about the rest of your day.
A little homework.
Exactly. Take a look around your living room or your workspace, or even just look at the apps on the home screen of your phone right now. Look at your environment. What identity is that environment currently voting for? Because it is casting a vote every single minute of the day. And the real question is it voting for the person you actually want to become?
That is a heavy question to end on, but a deeply necessary one.
It really is.
If you found value in this deep dive, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the Money Podcast Show. It genuinely helps us reach more people who need to hear this. And don't forget to drop a comment below with the name of the book or author you want us to dissect and debate next.
Thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us today. Next time on the show, we are unpacking a fascinating book that claims the real reason you aren't wealthy yet has absolutely nothing to do with your math skills and entirely everything to do with your childhood. You definitely won't want to miss it. See you then.